There you go. This is good content right here. Welcome, everybody, to the podcast that will soon be formally known as the Unicorn Roast Podcast. My name is Mike Elgan, and with me is my co-host, Emily Forlini. Hey, Emily, how you doing?
Hello, I'm good. I'm good.
As I alluded, we are working on changing the name of the podcast because nobody, especially my granddaughter, likes roasted unicorns. It's just too weird, and it doesn't tell people what it's about. And it's so we're going to come up with something more. I think we'll eventually land on something more basic.
So
But
wait, you're okay with it? Because
no,
I thought I was ruffling some feathers by being
no,
like,
no.
I think we need to rethink this.
I have unruffleable feathers,
Well, you're very,
and
very go with the flow. So
well, okay. So there's two of us, which makes it easier to deal with. If there was a panel of six people, we'd never stop disagreeing. There would always be the high maintenance person or whatever. There's only two of us, and so I've always telling you, and you've always been telling me that this podcast only works if it works for both of us completely, right? So
mhm.
we've skipped a couple of episodes. That's fine because if we can't skip episodes, that could mean that we can't do the podcast because if it's something that's this big requirement, we're trying to squeeze this thing into very busy lives where we have a
Mhm.
lot of deadlines, a lot of unmovable objects in our lives. And the podcast can't be one of those. Otherwise, I don't think it works. So, and the name
Right.
has to, you have to love the name, and then I have to love the name. So we'll come up with one that we love.
Yeah, and also we're not going to change it again. So I'm not kicking off a trend of every 4 months or three
Yes.
months we change the name.
Right.
I feel like we like greased the wheels. We figured it out. Like our episodes have gotten really good and informative, and I'm excited about it. And now I'm just like, okay, how did that sink in? And like, in what shape are we taking it forward? So I'm
Yeah.
considering it a natural creative process.
Absolutely. And, there are two schools of thought. One is that the name is everything. The other is that the name is nothing.
Yeah.
And I tend toward the latter because, we all have our favorite podcasts and I really don't care what they're named. I want them to have a name that I can recognize them in my app and I want to be able to mention them and mention the name. And it can't be a completely dumb name, but like, the famous people have, podcasts called the Joe Rogan Experience, right? Or the,
Which is
so-and-so
dumb. That's
podcast.
not a good name.
Right. It's not a good
It's
experience. That's it's the problem. But again, he's somebody who, he's famous enough
Mhm.
to do that. And we could do that as well or something like that. But, ultimately it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think, okay, so what did we decide we want to have our names in it?
I think that'd be nice because
Me too.
really, yes. And we don't make money on this. And I want to get into that a little bit in a minute. But like, this is really sort of an adjunct to our other work, right? And so it's really not we're kind of self-branding. So we want people to listen to the podcast to discover it serendipitously, decide they really like Emily Forlini, and then go hunt you down online and subscribe to your other stuff. Like that's the idea. So
Yeah,
having
that
having our names in the name of the podcast helps that goal.
yeah, I agree. And I also think the feeling is a little bit like mom and pop. Like, I don't know, we're trying to be personal and not too much on outer space. Like, Unicorn Roast might be a little too abstract, where I think we're just like two genuine people who spend our days studying this stuff and could just pontificate about it forever and are trying to like build something together. So I think having the names it feels right, feels
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Plus, I've also been informed by younger people in my life, Kevin, that the idea of a unicorn as a startup that's worth $1 billion, you don't hear it that much anymore. It's kind of a
Yeah.
thing that was big like 10 years ago or whatever. And of course, I'm living in the past, so it made perfect sense to me initially. But the other
You're hip.
thing
You're
is,
hip. Come on.
yeah, and so we also want to kind of be future proof, right? We
Mhm.
it occurred to me after we had a conversation about this a couple of days ago that podcasts could become obsolete in a couple of years. Maybe there's a new thing that comes out that is a new medium that everybody's doing, and all the podcasters have moved to the new medium. And then here we are, it's like having a TV show called the Mike and Emily Radio Hour. it's the
That'd be
wrong.
fun.
Yes, exactly. We should bring back vaudeville.
Yeah, also we should
Um,
speak in World War II voices
yes.
where we're like,
Oh yeah, right.
today in
The
tech,
Mid-Atlantic.
over
Exactly.
the mid-Atlantic, Elon Musk's jet flew. I can't even hold
I
it.
would love to do that. I would love to do that and do like homegrown sound effects where like a sound of a horse is like a couple of coffee cups on the
Ooh,
thing
yeah.
table. I would love that. But um, are you a big podcast listener, consumer?
I yes, but actually not really tech podcasts, like more just the fun stuff that I like to listen to, like more for entertainment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree that the name is kind of neither here nor there, but I do go to like the categories in Spotify and try to find stuff I'm interested in. So I just want to appear in the right category.
What are you interested in podcast wise?
Well, sometimes I do like This American Life, just like stories in the background. Sometimes I listen to like The Daily, which is just news, kind of like basics. And then I do kind of like lifestyle or like self-helpy kind of stuff. And I'm just like improving my life and I don't know, that kind of is a little more personal than like the
Hmm.
tech industry stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
What about you?
I mean, well, it's more or less the same. My diet is probably 30% tech,
Mhm.
30% politics, current events, and a smattering of other things. I have some favorites, but I tend to think that podcasts are like kind of many different things. I tend to think that the Daily is a news program for the New York Times.
Right.
It's a little unusual from a regular news program, but it could be on the BBC if they had fancy English accents. Um, then you mentioned the self-help stuff. This is like a classroom. You have the teacher, you have the student.
Mhm.
It's that scenario. You have different kinds of things. So one of the most popular kinds is the kind that we do, which is that we're a couple of people who are in a room chit-chatting, and the listener is the third person in that room,
Right.
right? So it's not a show, it's not a program, it's not a classroom, it's a
Mhm.
living room.
Mhm.
And, we're having an interesting conversation and the other person's part of it. Fortunately or unfortunately, they can't chime in, but we've all had the experience of sitting there when two other people are having an interesting conversation, just enjoying the conversation. That's what we do. That's the kind of podcast we do.
I agree. And I've thought about like, can we incorporate that into the name somehow? And I do think the podcasts I listen to regularly are kind of just like personalities, like people that like one that's really random. I don't even know why I like it is the show The Hills, like with like
No,
Kristen Cavallari
no,
from
I do
like
not.
the
No.
early okay, you're like so squarely out of that demographic. It's actually hilarious.
Yes.
But I'm in
Thank
it.
goodness. Okay. You're the target demo.
I'm actually a little young. I
Okay.
because they're like a little older than me, but one of them just I don't know, she's just has huge confidence and like a very different lifestyle than me. And so sometimes I listen to it, I'm just like, oh, that's interesting, like what you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's interested in my life, but it's like being a reporter, this and that. But I think just hanging out with people on a podcast, walking around the block is fun.
But this is the thing. You say you don't know if people are interested in your life.
Yeah.
I tend to think on a podcast like this, you share your life, and the people who are interested in your life can find the podcast and subscribe, and those who aren't can go subscribe to other podcasts. You don't. That's what makes it not a show. So, I'm definitely not everybody's cup of tea, but some people, uh, fi- uh, you know, care about what I say. So those are the people who would subscribe, and I think you just do the thing you want to do, and the people who like what you're doing find you.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
think
that's
it's
the
a
way to go.
I agree. And I mean sometimes it's a bit of a balance. Like I don't there's been this shift in the past like 5 or 10 years for almost like radical vulnerability and like this really putting yourself out there, personal branding. It's like lean into who you are, your deepest struggles. You should be talking about them online. And like some, I don't know if I want to do all that. Like I still like
Right.
to inform people and, you know, at the end of the day, I think people should get something from the podcast in terms of
Hmm.
like the own decisions that they're making and whether or not like I moved last Friday, which we were talking about. Like I don't know if that helps people, but that's something maybe we have to find my podcast voice.
I think moving is really interesting. We moved recently as well, moved our stuff anyway, and so I think that kind of stuff is interesting. And I also don't, personally, when I listen to a podcast, I want to learn something.
Yeah,
So I want people who are relatable, I like their personality, but I want to walk away with more knowledge than I had when I
I
started.
agree.
And so um, one of the podcasts that I like a lot is I discovered a new online publication that's paywall called Airmail. It's a culture politics publication. It's much better than it's really nice.
That's
It's
great. Good find.
Atlantic Monthly, but kind of like fresher than the Atlantic Monthly. I really like it. So
Yeah.
check into that. I've read that they have paywalled podcasts, but I listen to their podcast and I don't pay them a penny. And the podcast is really nice. They're really nice interviews. So I really like that kind of stuff. I like Sam Harris 60% of the time, right? He can be very interesting. I really like uh, conversations with Tyler.
Hmm. So
He's
do you like how personal do you like the content to be?
not very.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, if somebody has a fascinating life, then I want to hear about the fascinating aspects of their life. But if somebody's, just if they, I don't know, I don't. I'm also the same way with print journalism. For example, if I read the newspaper, for a long time it was considered, and probably still is, considered good journalism to say, to take a topical story, pick one person who's part of that story and make it all about that person.
Hmm.
I find that vaguely vexing. I want to just give me the story, right? And yes, put in the specific examples of individual people, but I don't need to. I feel like it's there's a bit of hand holding, which I don't feel like I want or need.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting because I think about like traditional journalism versus today too, and that's where I was kind of coming from, where everything has gotten so like personalized and opinionated, and like it's all about the writer and every facet of their life and their personality, and it's gotten so far away from objectivity. And there's at least like when I was in journalism school, there was a big middle of a big reckoning, like is objectivity possible? Like can you have a journalist who's just giving information and that's it, or is it inherently biased? And I feel like people just embrace that it's inherently biased and kind of have like run with that like a little bit too much.
Yeah, the public has a fraught relationship with content, and I know this as an opinion columnist because people don't know the difference,
Hmm.
or they don't care about the difference, or they can't recognize the difference. And in the world I grew up with professionally, there's a huge difference. Like there
Yeah.
are people who are trying really hard to be objective, and you hear people say, the received wisdom is that there is no such thing as objectivity. Fine, but you can try,
You
right? You can
can try,
try.
and people stopped trying.
Yes, exactly, right. And it was seen as a kind of an antiquated point of view, but a traditional newspaper has journalism that's trying to be objective, reverse pyramid style. Here's what happened, taking you
Yeah.
all the way through the thing, and then you get to the editorial pages, and then it's just the the people who are expressing opinions are consumers of the unbiased reporting,
Hmm.
and they make an argument, try to be persuasive using facts that were dug up by themselves, their own reporting or somebody else's reporting. This is the idea, but like people don't appreciate the difference anymore. So
Right.
it's kind of a problem.
Well, we also talked about this in our initial podcast discussions. Like, I really wanted to bring that back a little bit just by showing both sides of the story, which is just a basic, like a fundamental of any discussion. And I
Yeah.
also think has been lost a little bit. Um, and so I don't know that I just want to incorporate that, I guess. I don't know if we can, that should be in the name, but it's important. Like, I went to a bachelorette party in Utah that we couldn't
Hmm.
record last weekend. And I was just like, these people are so different.
Hmm.
This lifestyle is so different from my lifestyle. And it's just so refreshing to get out there
Yeah.
and realize that there really are really deeply entrenched other opinions that also make sense in that context.
Yes.
And I mean, also there was the Mormon thing going on. And I was
Mhm.
just like, this whole place is really different than like New York, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And it's just really good to get that refresher. So I hope that we can, you need to hold me to that. Everyone needs to hold me to
Yeah.
that. If I'm like in the rabbit hole, I need to be pulled out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we should disagree more if we can.
Yeah.
We should try harder. We started out talking about that and we how we both appreciate the art of disagreeing respectfully and
Yes.
constructively. And then we're sort of like we're going to disagree, like when we were talking about before we started the podcast, and then we're pretty agreeable with like we agree with each other a lot. It's got to stop, Emily. It's got to all this agreement has
I've
to come
thought
to an end.
about that. I'm like, am I not disagreeing, or do we actually just agree on everything?
Yeah, exactly. And so we should try a little harder, at least to explore alternative viewpoints,
Hmm.
even if we don't fully. I really like podcast. Another one I like, a political podcast, is called Not Even Mad, with what's his name, Mike Pesca. He used to be with Slate. He used to do a great podcast on Slate. Then he did another independent thing, and now this is his new independent thing. But basically, he brings people on. He's very centrist. He's very good at that sort of thing, and he and his guests often say, the preface a very strongly stated opinion with, "Well, I probably don't even believe this, but," and and I think that's nice because it's like let's not
Yep.
close minds yet. Let's keep them open and let's just explore what if what if
Hmm.
the right viewpoint is XYZ, even if I'm not feeling it right now. So I think that's constructive.
I agree, and I'm a like kind of a history person. I actually
Oh,
majored in
nice.
history undergrad, and I like a good primary source, like
Yes,
old writings, old books, and I
really, me too. See, we're agreeing again. I'm sorry. No, I
okay,
hate
go
them.
away. You're so
I hate
annoying.
old
Yeah.
books. They're so old.
I don't read books
And
anymore.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Who reads books? No,
Um,
anyway, you were saying,
yeah, so sometimes, and I also like nonfiction. So I read kind of like old accounts. Occasionally, when I'm in my best self, it's like the holiday week, the fire's on, and I'm just really like honed into my interests. That's like when I'm happiest. And I do think they use more rhetorical devices, like you're saying, like they'll go through an argument. They'll be like, okay, for the sake of argument, let's explore that viewpoint, and it's not personal to the writer. Like they're just flexing their mental muscles in a way that we don't do. That's not really something that people do anymore.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And back in the day when before radio, when writing was the medium, it
Right.
was the communications medium. Man, they were good at it, and they did not mind launching into a paragraph-long sentence with all these alleys and twists and turns and uh, you know incredible sentences, which nowadays you'd never get through it, and holding the idea in the mind, and also the thing I noticed. I'm writing a book, as you know, writing
Yay.
The Wizard of Oz. It's almost done, basically.
So cool.
Yeah, I love it. Wizard of Oz that takes place in 2100. And one thing that really occurred to me is like, oh my God, it was written in 1900, I believe, the original.
Hmm.
Like that, what's different? This is before, uh, this is before Ernest Hemingway
Hmm.
changed what a sentence is in the
Hmm.
American language. Basically, American writing used to have these long, 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 long sentences. And then he came along and just blew that up with a hand grenade, and now you have three-word sentences sometimes, and very simple. You string together the simple sentences, and you put images in people's minds without this lengthy descriptive thing, which F. Scott Fitzgerald, his friend, was so good at of like deliberately putting in your mind with words. Hemingway just like put in your mind without saying it, and you're like, wow, that's like pretty amazing. Anyway, that was a big difference. Is Hemingway? I think he changed everything.
Yeah. And I think you can say I prefer a shorter sentence personally, but very rich in detail. So like not a useless short sentence, but
Yeah.
I think the full paragraph, like 8 lines long sentences are I don't know what you think, but that's a bit much for me.
Yeah, I have been known to try to get away with a one-word paragraph
Oh wow. Okay.
in my opinion columns. So, but
Like what word? What's one word? Like
uh,
ahoy? I don't know, like a
I mean, like something like no. It's like
Oh
just to
yeah.
really offset it, because with online writing, in my opinion, you you sort of like crank the stuff more. You really push further into what's allowable in language for effect. More em dashes, more jarring things. And I think that's one of the jarring things you can do is you can have this you can put put something in its own paragraph that would normally be part of the previous paragraph or the next paragraph, and you do it for the effect, even though that's not technically good style. But I think
Mhm.
online style is different from that. But that's anyway.
That's true.
That's yeah.
I'm gonna defend my weird ahoy matey. I was thinking
That's
like
two
in
words.
interjections, like
Yes.
that's where I was going with that, just for the
Yeah.
record.
Yeah.
But I
Um,
also think increasingly that this type of thing it really is in the past. I've actually been thinking about this. I sometimes I'd be like, oh, the pendulum's gonna swing back and it'll be more about writing again. I actually don't really think that's happening anytime soon.
no, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep reading and
Yeah.
writing books. And again, you do your thing and find and let the audience find you. I think that doesn't really work with books because they will never find you.
Yeah.
So you have to do something else.
They could,
Well,
if you really have, you have to be super, super, super targeted. Like people are, there's not as much leeway. Like people aren't just gonna, for the hell of it, pick up a book. It's like they bought that damn book for a very specific reason.
yes,
And
yes,
so I think that's still there. But I mean,
right,
podcasts are cool. I think as long as
yeah,
we can, we should approach this like a craft too.
yes, I agree. And do our style of podcast and not like try to be a show or something, something like that. And speaking of which, I mean that's my own opinion, uh, and I think you agree with that.
Well, now I'm gonna try to find ways to not agree with you. So
Okay, perfect.
yeah,
Um, so the other thing I want to talk about is monetization because I've been a podcast fan and I used to really advocate. I'm like, I don't know when it was, years ago. I used to be like, why isn't everybody doing and listening to podcasts? It's the greatest medium in the world. People are like, what? And hardly any. And then it sort of went mainstream when, like 10 years ago or something. I don't know when it was. At some point.
for me it was Serial.
Okay,
That was
yeah,
the first
yes.
podcast I was like, wow, this is so cool. I was walking around LA, I lived there at the time, listening to Serial for hours, and that changed the podcast game for me.
For me, yeah, for me, there's a couple of the tech podcasts that got me going, and some of the first ones were technology oriented because those are the people who are going to be doing tech stuff. But I now regret, or I now feel I don't like the fact that everybody and their
Yeah.
uncle is doing podcasts because what happened is all these big media empires like, oh, the kids are all doing podcasts, let's do a podcast, and then they start a podcast, and it's basically the medium that they came from, plus they feel the need to turn it into a business and monetize the crap out of it. And I feel this kind of ruins the soul of podcasting, especially when a podcast starts with two ads. Like the first thing you hear is like they
Yeah.
just launch an advertising. And I can tell you something that a lot of people don't know. Those ads are placed based on your location. So when I'm in Spain or France or whatever, they're in the local language, those ads. And I'm like, I mean, how do you even
Useless.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I think that's problematic. I also don't like when people they sort of get you excited about the conversation. They're like, oh, to listen to the rest of the conversation, sign up for our thing. Slate
Yeah.
does it. Sam Harris does it. Sam Harris recently ended his sort of scholarship program. He had this program where, like, well, we charge, but if you really can't afford it, if you're a student or whatever, and you really can't afford it, we'll give it to you free. We've never turned anybody down. And he just canceled that
Hmm.
like last week because he said too many people
Jeez.
are taking advantage of it. I'm like, you know, I I really liked it. I didn't mind it so much before when you had that scholarship program, but now I mind it because it's like he's making bank. Like
Right.
how much money should somebody expect to make from a podcast?
I know. I mean, people just want to make more and more money, and when you see like that people are about to become trillionaires, everyone's like, "Oh, what am I doing?" And they just want to lean into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way,
So
I'm sniffling. I think it's getting worse. So if anyone's hearing weird sniffly noises, that's me.
Yeah, Emily's a cocaine addict, and she's just pretending that she has cold or something.
I'm just doing lines and talking about
Yes,
podcasting. Yeah.
exactly. We're all doing it.
Yeah.
It's like Hollywood in the '80s. Very cool.
Yeah.
So speaking of people with billions and billions of dollars, you wanted to talk about Apple's AI plans and what's happening with Apple. What's going on? I'm confused about this because why does Apple, which is such a capable company, fail on AI? Why are they dragging? What's going on with them?
Right. Yes. Yeah. So let's get into some content. I realized I want to talk about Apple, but I actually, something I did that was really cool that I didn't put in our rundown that we should talk about. Um, so we'll do Apple and then you can nix my next story. We'll do the cool one. So, um, okay, so I'm going to Apple WWC on next week. This time next week, I'll be on a plane, and it's my first time being there. And it's intriguing that I got invited because they're very much like you're in the club or you're not. You have to be personally invited by someone at Apple. I have not been to date, and I don't know what happened, but someone from Apple reached out to me and was like, "Hey, Emily, I want to get to know you more." And I see you've been writing about Apple Intelligence. Like, let's chat, hear about your background. And I was like, "Okay, cool." I get on the call with this person from Apple, and it was nice. It was a good call, but she was like, "So, like, are there any features of Apple Intelligence that you really like?" And I said no. I said no. I said honestly,
Yeah.
I have been writing about it since the start, since you introduced it last year. I find it very intriguing. I've written a lot about all the different angles of it, but I still think it's vague, and I have actually disabled a lot of the features in my phone because I don't find them useful. Like my biggest example is the notification summaries for texts and emails. So it's so like this crazy string, this notification summary, these words they put together about what the group chat's about or what the text is about. And I find it's like increases my cognitive load because I have to first interpret their crazy AI sentence of what
Interesting.
this text will contain. I have to be like, oh, what? Like I have, and I'm gonna open it. Then I open it, and it's actually like a totally different text from my friend. And now I'm like reading two texts per one, and it's not helpful in my opinion. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you have an iPhone?
I've never used, I have an iPhone. I've never used these features. I don't,
Do you have a
uh,
newer iPhone?
no, I don't
Okay.
know what it is, but it's a couple years old.
It's only on the new iPhones, and I got one for work. And so I've been testing it since the start. And I told her, honestly, I was like, I've turned it all off. I don't like it. And I went through the different examples, and she took that very gracefully. She was just a PR person. And then like a week or two later, I got an email that I was invited to their like special event. I was like, okay, I guess that went fine.
Yeah.
Um, I guess she appreciated, what you see is what you got. I'm not gonna lie to you. Um,
That's great, actually.
yeah,
That's to their credit that they invited you instead of
yeah,
saying, "Nah, we only want sort of the Kool-Aid guzzling
right,
faithful." So
right. And so I think I might have even brought up another thing that's wrong with what they've done is they announced it at last year's event, the Worldwide Developer Conference (WWDC), and then the new iPhone came out last fall, and it did not have Apple Intelligence features, even though they had already announced it and people kind of bought the phone thinking it was going to be there. And it some of those features, particularly the revamped Siri, like Siri's not that great. They're trying to make Siri better, and that still is not here. And there are three different lawsuits I've written about, like consumer false advertising lawsuits against Apple.
wow, because they didn't
Yeah.
ship. Wow,
Yeah, because they had a
I think
lot
they're going
of
to lose those. I think Apple's going to win those lawsuits.
Well, Apple has responded to them by removing some claims from its website. And so Apple seems to have conceded a bit that like it was misleading that people bought these phones and actually they don't have the most advanced features that maybe warranted the purchase. So
Hmm.
there seems to be an acknowledgement, which is interesting. And
Yeah.
it kind of sets a tone for the rest of like all this AI hype, making these huge promises. And a lot of it's not here yet. So I think this would be a very healthy market correction if indeed they go anywhere. So that's basically what's going on with Apple. That last year at this very event, they launched Apple Intelligence. WTF is Apple Intelligence. It's not an AI model. It seems to be a branding. And then the features it's just like a slew of I don't know, 30 features are going to launch over years, and many of them aren't here. So they kind of, I mean, do you ever hear anyone talk about Apple Intelligence?
Well, not in a positive way. I mean,
Yeah.
you hear people griping about it. You hear about it like when they used it to summarize news in the news app, and they were to making stuff up and saying that Netanyahu had been arrested and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Then you heard about it. But yeah, it's um, it's really problematic, and I think that it's part of Apple. As we go forward into the future, the iPhone will increasingly have problems like that. This right because in the extreme end, in the sort of like in the periphery of the phone market, there are phones where the entire user interface is AI.
Yep.
That's the interface.
With no screen, even.
Exactly. And then you have glasses that are going to come online as people are well, within a couple of years be clamoring for glasses that work by themselves or work with just a watch or something like that. And so the iPhone form factor is going to be squeezed and squeezed and squeezed until it's basically irrelevant. And I'm thinking that's going to be in about 10 years. But in the meantime, they have to struggle with this kind of stuff because everybody's expectations about what a computing device like a phone can do goes up and up and up because of the rapid advancements of AI. And so
Yep.
they it feels to me like Apple is being dragged kicking and screaming into the LLM AI world.
Pretty much. And it's just iPhones are very mature at this point. They work amazingly. They're great products, but the innovation just feels less and less and less to me. And they thought this was going to be the thing that was going to kickstart them into the new evolution of their devices. And they have already realized a year later that it's not. And they are working on glasses. They're working on all these different things. And I think, and with OpenAI, partnering with a former Apple exec, they're going to build a new hardware device that's they say is going to be a new AI device. And it just feels like the momentum is kind of away from iPhones. So this year, we're just a traditional cell phone. So this year at the conference, they're going to focus on like UI stuff, like all their bread and butter. And you'll like this. They're changing the interface of all the iPhones to actually be the design of the Vision Pro.
Wait,
So
how I had not heard that. Like so this kind of like soft fuzzy material
no,
or
no, that
spongy?
the
No,
it's all about
the
yeah.
interface. So it can be
The
circular
UI. It's going to be
icon.
circular.
Oh,
So I
okay.
thought you would like that because you have been on the glasses train as the wave of the future. And
Yes.
to me, the fact that their new interface for all their devices is going to be the tone is set from glasses,
Yes.
to me signals that you, my friend, are right.
Yes. I that is what it would signal to me as well. Although when the iOS was such a big deal and the iPad was such a big deal, there was a lot of rumors that the Mac OS would come to resemble an iPhone, basically. It kind of did a little bit, but then that I was kind of expecting them to all kind of merge, and they never really did, and it's
Yeah.
probably a good thing that they didn't. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think that the rumors are very strong that Apple's working on glasses that to compete with Ray-Ban Metas. I personally can't wait to get off Ray-Ban Metas because I don't want to be using a Meta product. I don't like the company, but I love the experience of it. So we'll see what happens there. But poor Apple, man. And so you're talking about the Johnny Ive
Yep.
Sam Altman thing. They had this weird wedding around announcement. I shat all over it in my newsletter.
It was
Going,
weird. It was they had a photo shoot black and white of them like smiling together and
I'm sure they'll be very happy. But everything we know about this product sounds like a complete loser. I mean, it goes in the pocket, and and it doesn't replace the phone. So what? Now I got to carry another thing in addition to my you know AirPods, my phone, my keys, my wallet, my I always keep my wallet in my front pocket because I don't want to get ripped off when I'm traveling around. So it's like I got all these things in my pocket. I cannot take anything more in my pockets. I'm done putting things away. So that's a problem. Women who don't, often
women don't
don't
even
want to put.
have pockets, first of all.
Oftentimes they don't, and so I don't. It's very. I've noticed it's very common for young women and girls, like high school girls or whatever, to always have a phone in their back pocket. It's part of the look,
Mm.
right? To have a big iPhone in their backpack. So now they're going to have two things, like a phone and then this other thing. It's just like they said it's a third device, and what they mean is after a laptop and a phone, this is a third device. I'm like, how about get rid of the second device? You should be creating something that you know is genuinely advanced and not another whatever that rabbit thing was, and
Mhm.
the humane pen or whatever. Nobody's going to hang anything around their neck. Nobody's got room in their pants. for this thing. And it's like, he's nuts. But I do have a lot of praise for Johnny Ive because he actually got $6.5 billion
Yeah,
out of this vague promise that
but
he was going
don't
to
you
design this
think it's,
wonderful thing.
I think it's doomed mostly because their egos are too big. I think a lot of innovation really needs to come from a much more genuine place than it's physically possible for them to do at this point. I mean, they're just billionaires. I feel like by creating a new device, a third device, that's just so obviously a business play. And to your point, we don't want new devices. We want a simplified tech experience. So why isn't that the goal?
Exactly. The home run for OpenAI is to design, sure, work with Johnny Ive, design some really beautiful glasses that are
Mhm.
very elegant, look like ordinary glasses, call them ChatGPT glasses. Ban ChatGPT from being used with anybody else's glasses,
Yeah,
right? This is what Apple would do. Boom, they would have a huge hit.
it's true. Okay,
But
I
they're
gotta
going to,
tell you my cool thing because it
yeah.
flows so well with this. So I visited a brain implant company a couple weeks ago.
Uh, uh-huh.
Not Neuralink, but a very strong competitor to Neuralink that actually started clinical trials earlier. It's called Synchron. And to me, what they're doing very much follows in this trend of, we don't want to hold things in our pockets. We don't want to hold things in our hands. We don't want to have to go to chiropractors because we're hunched over. And so I really walked away from that visit feeling like brain implants are going to be a thing in like 40 years. I'm dead serious.
That's because they chipped you and when you weren't looking
I
and
know.
they implanted that opinion in your head. Brilliant, brilliant marketing. So seriously, so for everybody, like for ordinary people who are not
No, so
paraplegic
the
or
goal, yeah, but so the goal for them is to have implants for anybody who wants one by the 2040s, and it will cost 40 to 50K.
hmm,
And they have now their products are integrated with Apple devices. So paraplegics, people who can't use their hands and sometimes can't speak, they can control their iPhone with their mind. That's happening now. And
yes,
so, and also they have a partnership with NVIDIA, which is trying to see if they can train LLMs on brain data. So your thought data, which really kind of looks like beeps and boops in a graph like this, and they map it to language. So they have put an implant in someone's brain and they say the word no over and over again, and they see in the data that it goes no, 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 no. It makes little humps. And so they create that's a unit of language. And so
wow,
basically they're putting all of this into NVIDIA and trying to train a predictive brain implant. And this is like actually happening.
that's amazing because that's exactly my reaction to getting a brain implant myself. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
And I also think it's funny that I've been always going on and on about glasses, and you're like, I don't really want to wear glasses, but a brain implant, that sounds.
I never said I want to wear it. I'm
You
just,
you think the public might?
I think a lot of people would go for it, honestly, today. I
Yeah.
think I think it's an early adopter situation. I'm talking like 100, 200 years in the future that this could actually be a thing because there's
Yeah.
tons of money going through it. I mean, Nvidia and Apple are like two of the biggest valuation companies on the planet. They're interested in this.
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, this is like actually low key happening, and they have really smart people working on it in
Right.
secret labs in New York that I visited, and they couldn't even tell me the address until like,
Ooh.
yeah,
Nice.
it's super early stage, but if if it can solve the privacy concerns, which are obviously massive, and if it can help people interact with technology in a way that they benefit from, and if the businesses force it on people, i.e., they make new things everyone loves, and you can only use it if you have a brain implant. Like today, you can't use the latest apps if you have an old iPhone. Like they kind of force you.
Yeah.
Like I know this is really long range, but I just walked out of that visit being like, I think this is on like Tim Cook's mind.
Here's the thing that. Oh, I think that's definitely true. But here's the thing that I think a lot of people don't know about the brain implant racket, which is that everybody thinks about Neuralink, which because Elon Musk is so good at marketing,
Mhm.
for all his issues, he's very good at bringing attention to the stuff that he's involved with. So everybody thinks, oh, brain implant, Neuralink. Neuralink is sort of a middle of the road technology play. It might have the potential to be better funded than most, but there are dozens of technologies, approaches, university labs, companies, startups that are working on this problem. And what's interesting about it is that they take very, very different routes to this outcome. And there are, like I said, there are dozens of significant players. There are dozens of different approaches to do it. And I don't know much about it,
Sounds
but
like you do.
when I've read about it and tried to sort of get my head around it, it's like no pun intended. They There's basically, oh, this company does this thing where they install something in the base of the whatever, and this other company has a thing that goes in the top of the head and it uses a sonar, but it's like fundamentally different approaches to mind reading. And by the way, I think it is very interesting that if two people have brain implants that can create language, you connect them together and you have telepathy.
Hmm.
So all these things that used to be spooky, magical, and so on, one by one, technology is doing the things that used to be spooky and magical.
And that's
And
why I felt like it's eventually going to happen. It's like a huge taboo right now, but I mean, it's definitely happening for people who truly need it. Like they can't communicate with anybody, they have zero quality of life. I do hope those people aren't being taken advantage of by these companies because it's almost like they have nothing to lose. Sure, implant something in me, and then like it might not be properly vetted, kind of thing. And yeah, so it's a bit murky, but
yeah,
if they can figure it out and it people don't have to carry a phone all day and they can do the same thing without carrying a phone all day, don't you think someone would go for that?
I do, absolutely do. And there's a million applications. So let me give you a certainty. It's a certainty that there will be in the near future exoskeletons. So just this thing you strap to the body that is essentially gives your body robot powers without any effort of the person that are thought controlled and where somebody who has no ability to move on their own can
Hmm.
walk around.
Yeah,
That's
crazy.
one. Um, who could disagree with that? And it'll involve a brain implant and just controlling artificial limbs and so on. I mean, this is stuff of science fiction, cyberpunk stuff where people have these like highly functional robotic arms. That's how you do it. You have a chip implant. You map everything so that the thought of just like we think we're going to pick something up, the same thought actually pick something up. And so that is 100% certainty. In Neuromancer, there's a an implant. I think it's an eye implant that is also a brain implant or something like that. But you can actually hack into somebody's natural vision, so you can see, like, you can literally hack somebody's prosthetic and see what they see through their
Wow.
eyes. Stuff like that, like crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody's thinking that they want that, but
Yeah.
maybe it would create empathy if we could just see things through other people's eyes,
That's what they
literally.
say. Yeah. I mean, I push them. I push the CEO quite a bit on, don't you think there's a trend in tech where they develop technology in the name of good, indisputable good? I mean, nobody would say that giving someone who can't speak or move the ability to talk to their loved ones and even
Right.
in some cases live somewhat independently, like you really can't argue with that. It's a truly amazing marvel of humanity. But don't you think sometimes we develop that tech and then it ends up being just severely exploited and used in the worst way possible? And then that, really cool use case is just in the rearview mirror and it's like 0.02% of total usage. And I pushed him on it a lot and at least he acknowledged that there are issues to his credit and that there are like serious problems. He said his biggest fear is like mass enslavement by a brain implant company that has bad intentions. I was like, whoa, dude.
Yeah.
Um, he kind of gave a little bit of an unsatisfying answer though. After that, he was like, "Well, the market will correct for that. Like, if people don't like it, don't feel comfortable, they won't buy it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's kind of subtle. Like, we're kind of groomed over time."
What if the implant makes them buy
Yeah, I
something,
mean,
or I don't
it
know.
just so I gotta work. I'm working on the piece now. I have to kind of tease through all this, but their confidence was dripping from the walls. They said,
Yeah.
I have no concerns this won't work. We have the
Yeah.
best people. You have to be published a million times over to be working here. Like it was just crazy how confident they were, and they just didn't even flinch.
Yeah. As a futurist, the thing that they are basing their confidence on, I would guess, which is in general a pretty good thing to base your confidence on, is the fact that if you launch something into the public right now, there's no way. We move stepwise into these things and we adjust, and like new generations of people enter into the world. We're basically people who are 10 years old now never knew a world when you didn't have a voice in the house that you could just talk to that would give you information, right? The people who are toddlers right now will never know a world when you didn't have everybody didn't have augmented reality, because by the time they're aware of why mommy's glasses light up whenever she gets a message or whatever, that is augmented reality, which is really an augmented person, it will just be perfectly normal. That person is a 35-year-old or 40-year-old will think that a brain implant is just, well, it's just another cybernetic device I've already got. I'm already enhancing myself with XYZ. My watch is always doing my blood chemistry. I've got I've got a bionic arm or whatever, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
So, but it's not us that has to accept it. It's future people who
right.
have to accept it, and so they probably will. I think you're probably, well, we're here, we are agreeing again. No, you're wrong. You're wrong, Emily.
No, it was good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I used to poke some holes in it. I mean, I can poke some holes in it.
Yeah.
Like, I did talk to a professor or two about it because sometimes they can be a little more objective, and they were like, this is really, really long way off, and the gains in this space take a really long time to achieve. So that's true, but I mean, what is the next thing that's going to make us look like cavemen or cave women? I mean, there's got to be something.
I've always looked like a caveman, so I'm not worried about that at all. So
Well,
anyway,
anyway, that's me. What did you have?
um, I think I think I don't know if you want to keep going, or should we
Are you
call it? Because we
satisfied? I mean, I kind of dominated there with my brain implant.
see, this is the benefit of brain implants. I think they gave you one, and now you're like, you just want to talk about brain implants because that's the. No, I'm kidding.
Honestly, it
Um,
blew my mind. Like,
yeah,
I'm a bit jaded, but that was like the coolest thing I've ever done as a journalist. I'm serious. Like
really.
walking in that office and just having my mind blown and seeing the future. Like our photographer came with me and we had to go straight to the bar after. Like we had to debrief everything that happened. We went directly to the bar and then we got on the New York subway and we were looking around at everybody and we felt like they were all just like sitting ducks. We were like, "Oh my God, look at all this data. Look at all these thoughts in this subway. Like they're all
Yeah,
gonna try to get this data of these people. They're all on their phones. They don't even know that in
right.
100 years there won't be phones. And it just we we
But also they're already plugged into the system, right? Or with
they're
their
in the
phones,
system. I know.
right?
We're
So
all
and
in the
so
system.
they're happily, just give me the blue pill. I don't want to remember nothing,
Exactly. They're going to
right?
get the phones and then I'm going to go to WWDC and they're going to introduce the glasses or they'll do that later, maybe their hardware event in the fall. But I just saw it all unfolding and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, this is like really just what's happening."
Everybody's going to want the eye chip,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Exactly.
that no, that's very cool. Um, I mentioned that I'm working on the Wizard of Oz as sci-fi. It takes place in the
Mhm.
year 2100. That's how they control the flying monkeys, is
Oh, look at
through
you.
telepathy, and this kind of technological telepathy. Anyway, so coming to a fine bookstore near you, not soonish, maybe by the end of the year, whatever. But anyway, I think that
Mhm.
will be much more mainstream than people think, and I think it's really interesting that you're getting into it. Can I tell you the most crazy exciting thing first exciting thing I saw? I went to
Mhm.
the first DARPA Grand Challenge.
Okay,
Um,
interesting. DARPA is the US
is
government agency that
That's right.
first funded the guy who started the company I'm talking about.
Don't doubt it at all. So
Yeah.
that's the Pentagon's. They seed startups that will help the Pentagon. So they invented the internet. They funded the internet. They fund all that kind of stuff. And they're very good. They have these contests, which are usually just like calls for tech. and then people
Hmm.
come to them and do. But they also have contests. So the grand challenge was $1 million to any university or whatever that could win a race of self-driving cars. I think this was 2001.
Okay.
Self-driving cars in 2001, and it was in the desert, so they didn't kill it, people. Kevin was with me. He was, I don't know, he was a teenager, or
Wow, so cool for a
something.
teenager to go to that.
Oh yes, and it was they had, there's this motorcycle that was a self-driving motorcycle, and it just kind of wobbled and fell over right in front of the starting line. I don't think any of them finished the race. Um, but they were like, it was hilarious because these cars were just going bonkers, and but it was mind blowing to see them doing anything. You know, any success was just
Hmm.
really surprising. And then they had another grand challenge where I think Carnegie Mellon and a couple of others just like smoked the thing, and they were off the races. And now you can actually ride in one. But that was really exciting. That was really advanced. It's similar to what you're doing. And you look at how long ago that was. And back then, I would try to explain to people the concept of a car driving itself, and that was difficult to explain because people are like, "What do you mean?" Like, no, there's nobody in the car, just a computer with sensors. Wait,
Right.
what? It was just so beyond science fiction. And so, what you're talking about is the same thing. Like if
Mhm.
you were to bring this up on that subway, people would be like, "What? I'm not. That's not even. What are you talking about?" And it could be very well as mainstream as self-driving cars are.
Exactly. It just felt like
That'd
a
be
real
amazing.
glimpse into the future, and it was my first experience feeling that.
Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
welcome to the future. I'm glad you're excited about it, and I can't wait to read your piece. I'm sure it'll be really great, and we'll talk about that on a future episode.
We should
But we
also
should
interview you about your book on a future episode.
okay,
Like this should be a stop on your book tour. It'll be a one-sided, I'll interview you.
fantastic. You want me to send you a copy?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I'll pay
Um,
you. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm all in on your book.
okay, great. Or I'll just send a chip and you just plug it into your. What was it? I think it was Neuromancer. They had little plug-ins to the brain chips. There's like little things that they called Microsofts,
Ooh.
and you just plug something into your brain and you would know something. So
Well,
I
maybe
just
I'll
I think
dress up as a flying monkey to start.
that would be amazing. I'll dress up as a wicked witch, and
Yeah. All right, so when are we
that'll be
deciding
awesome.
the name of this podcast? Like, we're
I
just
mean,
gonna mull it over,
I think we should mull it over. It's like something with Mike and Emily, or it's the Mike and Emily something, right?
right? Yeah,
I mean,
pretty
so
much.
I mean, I think we shouldn't use the word podcast. I have a bunch of negatives, right? I don't think it
Right.
should be cutesy, cringy. I sent you a whole list of
Hmm.
off the top of my head of the things that we should avoid. I don't think we should use the word podcast for the reason I said before, because a
Hmm.
podcast might become obsolete and that might sound old timey someday. And so we want to roll with the media changes if necessary. We want to keep that option open and, like you say, never change it again. So I don't know. I think we should keep thinking about it.
I think right
Uh,
now we're just Mike and Emily undecided.
it could also just be Mike and Emily.
Just Mike and Emily.
If nobody changes their first name, I think we're good.
That's gonna sound old. Those are pretty traditional names.
Yes, right,
Too bad, but
right.
that's the reality. We're just Eleanor and Herb.
Ernest and Gertrude,
Your name is
old
Sue.
timey radio
You're a
hour.
male Sue.
Exactly, right. Um, no, I think we'll strike upon the perfect word to insert before or after this
Right. Right.
these names. So you'll think of something.
All right. Well, sometimes I just have a moment. I'm thinking about it, so I'll text you. And if anyone happened to make it this far in the podcast, go you. And also, please send us your ideas. All right. Well, you have made it through another episode of Unicorn Roast Podcast, also known as Mike and Emily something TBD podcast. No podcast, not using that word. We have no paywall, no ads, and no sponsors. And all we ask is a 5-star rating and a glowing review and podcast name ideas. If you could follow us, subscribe, and get links to our show notes at our website, unicornroast.com, that would be great. We would love to see you there. And please email questions and comments to unicornroastpodcast@gmail.com, and we will see you next week.